Welcome back to the American Almanac Podcast, the podcast where we delve into the rich tapestry of America's past to uncover the stories that have shaped our nation. I'm your host, Jim Hunt. Today, we're turning back the clock to explore a pivotal, yet often overlooked chapter in American history, the War of 1812. You can find the blog post for this podcast at theamericanalmanac.com. This conflict, sometimes referred to as America's Second War of Independence, was a complex and multifaceted event that tested the young nation's resilience and fortitude. It was a time of bold characters, fierce battles, and significant political maneuvering. So sit back, relax, and join me as we embark on a deep dive into the causes, key battles, and lasting impacts of the War of 1812. To truly understand the War of 1812, we need to set the stage by looking at the geopolitical climate of the early 19th century. The United States was a young nation, eager to assert its sovereignty and expand its territory. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Britain was locked in a titanic struggle with Napoleonic France, a conflict that had been raging since 1803. One of the primary catalysts for the War of 1812 was maritime tensions between the United States and Britain. The British Royal Navy, in desperate need of manpower to fight Napoleon, began the practice of impressment. This involved boarding American ships on the high seas and forcibly conscripting sailors, many of whom were American citizens, into British service. Between 1803 and 1812, an estimated 6,000 Americans were impressed. Imagine the outrage. American sailors kidnapped and compelled to fight under a foreign flag. But the maritime issues didn't stop there. The British had implemented the Orders in Council, a series of trade restrictions aimed at crippling the French economy. These restrictions severely limited American trade with Europe, which was vital for the young nation's economy. The United States saw this as a blatant violation of international law and an assault on its neutrality. In response, President Thomas Jefferson enacted the Embargo Act of 1807, aiming to pressure Britain and France by prohibiting American ships from trading in foreign ports. Unfortunately, this move backfired spectacularly, causing significant economic hardship at home without swaying British policies. Adding fuel to the fire were the frontier conflicts with Native American tribes. The British, seeking to limit American expansion, provided support to Native American leaders like Tecumseh, a Shawnee chief who sought to unite various tribes to resist American encroachment. The British supplied them with arms and ammunition, further heightening tensions. In Congress, a group known as the War Hawks emerged, led by figures like Henry Clay of Kentucky and John C. Calhoun of South Carolina. They were ardent nationalists who believed that war with Britain was necessary to defend American honor and possibly seize British territories in Canada. All these factors culminated on June 18, 1812, when President James Madison signed the declaration of war against Britain. It was a bold move for a young nation with a small navy and an ill-prepared army. Now, let's delve into the war itself. The battles fought, the strategies employed, and the heroes and villains that emerged. The early stages of the war did not go well for the United States. The initial plan was to invade Canada based on the assumption that Canadians would welcome liberation from British rule. General William Hull led an American force into Canada from Detroit, but soon retreated in the face of British and Native American forces. In a humiliating turn of events, Hull surrendered Fort Detroit without a fight in August 1812. Meanwhile, on the high seas, the U.S. Navy, though significantly smaller, punched above its weight. The USS Constitution, famously known as Old Ironsides, defeated the HMS Guerriere and later the HMS Java, boosting American morale. Captain Isaac Hull's victories became legendary, proving that American ships could hold their own against the mighty Royal Navy. In 1813, the Battle of Lake Erie became a turning point in the Northwest. Commanded by 28-year-old Oliver Hazard Perry, the American fleet engaged the British in a fierce battle. Perry's ship was heavily damaged, but he famously transferred his flag to another vessel, continuing the fight. His message after the victory, "We have met the enemy, and they are ours," became immortalized. This victory allowed General William Henry Harrison to reclaim Detroit and defeat British and native forces at the Battle of the Thames. It was here that Tecumseh was killed, dealing a severe blow to Native American resistance in the region. On the southern front, the Creek War raged, part of the larger conflict involving Native American tribes allied with the British. General Andrew Jackson led American forces to victory at the Battle of Horseshoe Bend, effectively crushing the Creek Nation and opening up vast territories for American settlement. In 1814, the situation took a dire turn for the United States. With Napoleon's defeat, Britain redirected seasoned troops to the American theater. The British launched a three-pronged invasion strategy from Canada into New York, an assault on the Chesapeake Bay region, and an attack on New Orleans. The British forces marched into Washington, D.C. in August 1814 after defeating American troops at the Battle of Bladensburg, a battle derisively called the Bladensburg Races due to the quick American retreat. The British set fire to public buildings, including the White House and the Capitol. First Lady Dolly Madison famously saved a portrait of George Washington before fleeing the White House. This attack on the Capitol galvanized American resistance. Just weeks later, the British advanced on Baltimore. Fort McHenry, guarding the harbor, withstood a 25-hour bombardment. Witnessing the relentless attack yet seeing the American flag still flying inspired lawyer Francis Scott Key to write a poem titled Defense of Fort McHenry, which later became the Star-Spangled Banner. In the north, the Battle of Plattsburgh on Lake Champlain halted the British invasion from Canada. American naval forces under Commodore Thomas MacDonough defeated the British fleet, forcing them to retreat and abandon their plans to sever New England from the rest of the country. Meanwhile, in New England, the war was highly unpopular. The region's economy, heavily reliant on trade, suffered under the British blockade and the Embargo Act. Discontent culminated in the Hartford Convention, where Federalist delegates discussed their grievances and even contemplated secession. However, the convention's timing couldn't have been worse, as the war ended shortly after, rendering their actions moot and discrediting the Federalist Party. Now let's turn our attention to the Southern Theater and the Battle of New Orleans, perhaps the most famous battle of the war, albeit fought after peace had been negotiated. General Andrew Jackson commanded a diverse force consisting of regular Army troops, militia, free African Americans, Native Americans, and even pirates led by the notorious Jean Lafitte. On January 8, 1815, they faced a British force twice their size. Utilizing clever defensive positions and the natural terrain, Jackson's forces inflicted heavy casualties on the British, who suffered over 2,000 casualties compared to the Americans' 71. The victory at New Orleans made Andrew Jackson a national hero and became a symbol of American resilience and ingenuity. It's ironic that this battle occurred after the Treaty of Ghent had been signed on December 24, 1814, officially ending the war. However, due to slow communication, neither side was aware of the treaty. Speaking of the Treaty of Ghent, let's explore how the war came to an end and its aftermath. Negotiations began in August 1814 in Ghent, Belgium. Both sides were war-weary. The British, though militarily superior, were facing economic strain and public fatigue after years of fighting Napoleon. The Americans realized that their ambitions of conquering Canada were unrealistic. The treaty essentially restored the status quo antebellum, meaning territories captured during the war were returned to their pre-war owners. Notably, the treaty did not address the issues of impressment or neutral trading rights, but these issues became moot with Napoleon's defeat and the end of British-French hostilities. Now, let's delve into the consequences and legacy of the War of 1812. Domestically, the war fostered a sense of national unity and identity. The successful defense against a global superpower boosted American confidence. The term era of good feelings is often used to describe the post-war period marked by political cooperation and the decline of the Federalist Party. The war had significant economic implications. The British blockade had forced the United States to become more self-reliant, spurring the growth of domestic industries. This industrialization laid the groundwork for America's emergence as an economic power. Politically, the war marked the end of the Federalist Party, which had opposed the war and was seen as unpatriotic after the Hartford Convention. The Democratic-Republican Party dominated politics, leading to less partisan strife in the short term. For Native Americans, the war was disastrous. The death of Tecumseh and the defeat of Native alliances led to the loss of vast territories east of the Mississippi River. The United States accelerated its policies of westward expansion, often at the expense of Native American lives and cultures. Internationally, the war had mixed outcomes. While the United States did not achieve its war aims of ending impressment or annexing Canada, it did gain respect from European powers. The Royal Navy ceased impressment practices, and Britain began to view the United States as a sovereign nation rather than a former colony. The Rush-Bagot Agreement of 1817 and the Convention of 1818 further improved relations between the United States and Britain, leading to the demilitarization of the Great Lakes and the establishment of the 49th parallel as the boundary with Canada. Culturally, the war left an indelible mark. The Star-Spangled Banner eventually became the national anthem. Figures like Andrew Jackson and William Henry Harrison rose to prominence, both later becoming presidents. In reflecting on the War of 1812, it's clear that it was a conflict of paradoxes. It began with unclear objectives and ended without a decisive victory for either side. Yet it played a crucial role in shaping the United States' national identity and future trajectory. The war tested the resilience of the young nation and ultimately proved that the United States could defend its sovereignty against a major world power. It also exposed the need for a stronger federal government and military, lessons that would influence American policy in the years to come. Moreover, the war's legacy serves as a reminder of the complexities of international politics, the unintended consequences of conflict, and the profound impact that war can have on a nation's psyche and destiny. As we conclude today's episode, let's consider the words of President James Madison, who in his war message to Congress stated, "We behold, on the side of Great Britain, a state of war against the United States, and on the side of the United States, a state of peace towards Great Britain." The War of 1812 may not be as celebrated or as well known as other conflicts in American history, but its significance is undeniable. It was a crucible that forged a stronger, more united nation, setting the stage for America's emergence as a global power in the centuries to follow. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the War of 1812. I hope you've gained a richer understanding of this critical period in our nation's history. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the American Almanac and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring history to life. Please visit our website, theamericanalmanac.com. I'm Jim Hunt, and until next time, keep exploring the past to better understand the present. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the story of America is the story of us all.